Okay guys, here's the second part of the first concept you guys are doing with the radicals. All right, and this is with multiplying radicals. So multiplying radicals is you're just taking this radical times this radical. In this case, 8 times 2, or the square root of 8 times the square root of 2, would give us the square root of 16. And then at the end we would simplify and say the answer is 4. Okay, so when you guys get a problem like this, there's one of two ways you can go. You can actually do the multiplication. You can do the 3 times 21, which would give us the square root of 63. And then you can think of the factors of 63 and then see if you get anything that's a perfect square. Or you can break these apart and look for matches. Either way is going to be fine. I'm going to show you kind of how I do these. All right. So for this, I'm going to bring down the square root of 3. I'm going to try and break this apart. I can see the square root of 3 times the square root of 7. Because 7 times 3 is 21. Now remember, for every square root you have that matches another one, you can get rid of the radical sign and pull that number out, right? Because 3 times 3 is 9. So if I make this the square root of 9 times the square root of 7, I'm going to get those 3's back inside there, okay? So because these match, right, I can make this 3, radical 7. All right? Okay, same thing here. Now there's a few more things you can do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up into the square root of 5 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 5 times the square root of 3 because of this, right? All right, square root of 5 isn't a perfect square, but square root of 5 and square root of 5, these cancel. So we're left with 5, right? We can pull out a 5. All right, square root of 4 is what? 2, good job. And then times the square root of 3. So 5 times 2 is 10, radical 3. All right, so that's one way to do those first two problems. Okay, all right. Here's the other way. If you decide to actually multiply these, I'm going to show you that we're going to get the same exact answer. All right, so 3 times 21 equals the square root of 63. 63 breaks into the square root of 9 times the square root of 7. Square root of 9 is 3, so 3 radical 7. Okay. All right, 20 times the square root of 15 would be the square root of 300, which breaks into the square root of 100 times 3, or 10 radical 3. Okay, so in these cases, guys, with these first two types of problems, it doesn't matter how you do it. If you want to break this one up and match things up and pull out those squares, great. If you feel confident that you can multiply them and you know your factors well enough to break them down like this, do it that way. Either way, you're always going to get the same answer. You should always be able to simplify it and get to this end result like we did before. All right, so the last one we're going to work on is this one. Square root of 10x times the square root of 2x. I'm going to move it up here so we can do it both ways. All right, square root of 10x times the square root of 2x. All right, so what we can do is we can do this. Square root of 20x squared. Square root of 20 times the square root of x squared. Square root of 4 times the square root of 5 times the square root of x squared. 2, because the square root of 4 is 2, times radical 5 times x. Because remember, x times x gives us x squared. This is saying, right, what number times itself gives us x squared? Well, x does. So our answer would be 2x radical 5. Okay. If you decide to break it apart, you could have done this. Square root of 2 times the square root of 5 times the square root of x, right? And then done times the square root of, I'm going to rewrite this down here, square root of 2 times the square root of x by breaking that up. These match, so we can pull out a 2. These match, so we can pull out an x. And you're left with that. Okay? So remember, if you have two things that match, that are inside, they come out, right? Because this would be square root of 4, which we know the square root of 4 is 2. This would be the square root of x squared, which we know is x. All right, so when it comes to multiplying radicals, you're just taking those two numbers and you're multiplying by each other, all right? And then apply exponent rules and work backwards once you guys get to the point where you have to find the factors. Okay? All right, I've got one more I want you guys to write down, and it's got a little bit more to it. But again, if you guys take these one step at a time, you're gonna be able to do these, okay? All right, so we've got in this one, the square root of 5 x to the third y times 2 radical x. Okay, in this case, this 2 is already on the outside, so we're going to write that here. And then what we're going to do is we've got 5x to the third times y times x. All right, so I wrote it this way so we can start to simplify. Again, bring down the 2. Now inside here, if we just had this problem, 5x to the third y times x. Remember, there's a 1 here, so now we've got 5x to the fourth y. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 times the square root of 5 times the square root of x to the fourth times the square root of y. So break all those out into their own individual square root, okay? Square root of 5 doesn't simplify, no perfect squares we can break it into, so it's going to stay. 2 is going to stay. Now, what number times itself would give us x to the fourth? Well, if you guys remember back to your exponent rules, hopefully you remember that x squared times x squared is x to the fourth. And then again, square root of y doesn't have an answer. Okay, in this case, 2 times x, 2x squared. And then if you get things like this that are in the radical that can't be simplified, you just put them back inside the radical sign like that, right next to each other. So this would be your simplified answer for a problem that looks like this. Okay? Again, guys, please do your best. Keep working on these. If you have questions, let me know. I'm going to publish the 11.2 notes on Canvas with the answers filled in. So if you want to go in there, some of these problems that I pulled up here today were from there. You guys can look at them, and there's even some examples you can try with the answers already on there. So maybe you write the problem down and then check the answers and see if you get it right. All right, good luck. And again, email me if you guys have any questions.